All right, now let us turn to Ukraine, where violence between Ukrainian troops and pro-Russian forces, it's not over. However, authorities say the tensions have definitely started to simmer, at least for now. Well, today, military officials report heavy artillery barrages and air attacks on the Donetsk region. 5 militants killed in the region just yesterday. And today, President Obama is in Poland, where he pledged to boost the U.S. military presence in Europe, calling on Congress for $1 billion to boost security in the region. The president also had a message for the Russian president that was he ought to pull his troops back from the border or face tougher sanctions.
We are going to be prepared for any contingencies that may come up if, in fact, Mr. Putin continues to pursue strategies that destabilize its neighbors.
And both Obama and Putin are expected to share a stage here, where they'll be at a same event attending a D-Day commemoration this Friday in Normandy, France, of course. However, no talks are planned. All right, I want to bring in Matthew Schmidt. The last time we talked to Matthew, he was in the Ukraine. He's an assistant professor of national security and political science at the University of New Haven, also a contributor to Matters military blog, hosted by the Georgetown Journal of International Affairs. And you were asked, and you were a reminder there for the recent elections, and in our conversation that we had when you were there on the ground, a lot of the people from one of the communities where you were monitoring those elections, they were on the ground in this region that we saw the most recent fighting in. All said, when you left, compared to when you got there, do they think that A, the election was legitimate, and B, that it'll carry weight, or that it was an election, but in the end, what will happen next will be decided just by Moscow, not by the people of the Ukraine?
No, absolutely. The people think the election was legitimate, and from what I saw, it was legitimate, and from what was reported by the OSCE countrywide, it was legitimate. The Ukrainians, Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking, do think that their president-elect, Petro Poroshenko, is a legitimate president, that he will speak for the nation, and that Putin will listen to him right now. That doesn't mean that Putin won't change his mind on things further down the road, but he's a legitimate president.
Let's talk about the card the president played today in Poland, and in that, hey, we're willing to put boots on the ground, albeit in a limited capacity, and we're going to be putting money towards this. Take me behind the curtain a little bit. What's really going on
Well,
here?
so the importance of this move today was basically symbolic. It was an attempt to reassure our allies in Eastern Europe, primarily those NATO members that are either on the border of Russia, like Poland, or like Lithuania and Estonia, which have significant Russian-speaking minorities and might be subject to a kind of Russian power play in those regions, like what we're seeing in Eastern Ukraine. So basically what you're going to have is a shift of training from Germany and Italy and Western Europe into places like Poland and the Baltic states as a way to, again, reassure them psychologically that the U.S. is committed. You know, the old joke on NATO was NATO exists for 3 reasons: to keep the Russians out, to keep the Germans down, and to keep the Americans in. So I think this is really just a replay of that.
Okay, now there are no talks scheduled, and they're going to be on hallowed ground. For whatever it's worth, we're going to be doing a special on this Friday on the 70th anniversary. We went as a station back with vets from our region, and it's one of the most unbelievable places. If you ever want to see, similar to Arlington, the most preserved land with the most unbelievable history on it, it is Normandy Beach. But to that end, even if they don't have direct talks there, they certainly have intermediaries behind the scenes. What is it that Putin wants from us, and what is it that we want from him?
What we want from Putin is an assurance that he's not going to cross the border, first of all, with conventional forces. Secondly, we want an assurance that he's going to start really cracking down on these irregulars, either Russian special forces or simply ex-Soviet military types that get money and arms from the Russian government and cross the border into Ukraine, that he's going to crack down on that. I'm not sure what it is that Putin wants from the United States. It's basically a chance for Putin to appear strong and appear oppositional to President Obama for his domestic audience back home.
Did Putin get what he wanted here?
In Ukraine? Not yet. What Putin wants is some kind of leverage on Kiev to keep Kiev from A, becoming part of the European Union, and B, joining NATO. I think it's nearly impossible that Ukraine will join NATO. If it does, it'll be years because their military forces are not up to standard.
Right.
And secondly, the rule on joining the European Union is that you have to have settled all of your border disputes. Well, Crimea. So as long as Ukraine is not willing to officially give up its right to Crimea, it's unclear to me how it will become part of the EU. So in a sense, yes, I think he did.
Interesting. All right, stay with us,
Yep.
okay? Governor Cuomo, back stateside here, dodging a political bullet here. We talked quite a bit about it on the party when he got the nomination from the Liberal Working Families Party, or the question is, did he? Liberals still not happy. They called it a backroom deal. They're not doing cartwheels over. And some are even calling for another challenge. Well, today, Andrew, he spoke with a woman who might just, in fact, pick that fight with the governor. His conversation straight ahead.